It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 5 films of August 17th, 2007. We've got a comedy classic. We've got some lesser films, a lot of lesser films, when you really think about it. A remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, some medieval film with Colin Firth. We have a movie where it's about two guys who are who are the greatest Donkey Kong players of all time, and a British comedy that eventually led to an American remake. But we'll delve into all those in just a little bit. But before we do any of that, we got to talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, and there was no bigger new release this weekend than Superbad. Interesting to see how far they've come since then. Superbad, of course, is the film where you have Jonah Hill and Michael Cera as two teenagers. This is basically Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg putting themselves in the situation here. They're two teenagers about to graduate from high school, and before graduating, the boys want to party and lose their virginity. But their plan proves harder than expected, including having Christopher Mintz-Plasse as McLovin. They have that. They have two cops that are after them, Seth Rogen and Bill Hader playing the cops. And, of course, they want to get laid. And they have Emma Stone and Martha McIsaac as the two girls of their affections. And just chaos and hilarity ensues. I've been talking about One of Them Days recently because I just saw it this weekend. And this was another movie I should have brought up when I was talking about that movie because it feels very similar to that movie in particular, where it takes place over the course of one day and one night, actually. And you have these two best friends who are going off to college after this season, after this year actually, but their friendship is going to be tested going forward, and they're in the situation here where they basically have to get through this one night and have the ultimate dreams before they go off to college, and that includes losing their virginity and all that stuff and partying and doing stuff. And it's about as chaotic and fun as you can get, and it's a great, great movie, man. It's one of the best coming-of-age comedies you'll ever see because of all the performances, not just from Hill, Cera, Mintz-Plasse, and Emma Stone, but a great supporting cast that includes Rogen and Bill Hader as the cops. They are absolutely hilarious in here. A lot of really good talent all across the board here. It's a really funny movie, and it's a movie that has so many memorable quotes about it. It's a movie that definitely deserves the lasting legacy that it has. I mean, that trailer alone had some great memorable moments from that movie, and it's very uplifting. It's a very fun coming-of-age story, and it also is very emotional, too, and very heartfelt. You do buy Jonah Hill and Michael Cera as these two best friends, knowing that they're not going to spend too much time much longer, because not only are they going off to college, but they also want to get with these girls, and they want to start building a relationship together, and that's what the last scene of the movie, I think, does a very good job of handling. And it just works really well on a number of different levels. It's a very funny movie. It's a very clever film. It knows when it needs to be stupid. It knows when it needs to be heartfelt. It's a really, really funny comedy that just works on so many levels. Superbad is a classic film. What more can you say, man? It's a great movie. I can't recommend it enough. Superbad, great, great film. So, with that said, let's get to some of the lesser movies that came out this weekend, and let's be honest, most of them are not that great. We have a couple of exceptions here that we'll get to, but let's talk about the film that follows after Superbad as the next big release of the weekend. That is Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig in The Invasion. Yeah, don't let the marketing for this movie try to fool you. This is essentially another remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it was intended to always be that way, but the writer of this movie, David Kajganik, he updated the story to reflect contemporary times, and it's pretty much just a remake of that movie, but this is one of those movies where it has a lot of production troubles behind the scenes. You have Nicole Kidman as a psychiatrist in Washington, D.C., who finds that everyone around her turns into emotionless beings shortly after a space shuttle crashes to Earth, bringing with it mysterious alien spores. And, of course, they've done Invasion of the Body Snatchers before. Of course, there's the original 1956 movie, there's the remake by Philip Kaufman, and then there's Abel Ferrara's Body Snatchers, which is a criminally underrated remake of that movie. But this one, judging by the fact that the studio was not happy with the original cut, and they basically had to hire the Wachowskis and James McTeague from V for Vendetta to reshoot the scenes in the movie, that should give you a sign right there that this is not going to be a good movie, and it's not a good movie at all. It's a very boring movie when you really look at it, because, everybody here is incredibly lifeless, but in other movies, in other remakes, there's at least something there that makes them somewhat threatening. Nobody in this movie comes off as threatening whatsoever. They come off as characters, stock characters that you expect in a movie like this. There's nothing about them that makes them worthwhile at all. It's just a waste of time. Like, it's a movie where there's so much there that could work for a film like this, but yeah, if your characters are completely useless, they have nothing of value whatsoever, and they're not threatening in any way, shape, or form, why the hell am I here then? I mean, just why am I even sitting here for watching this? I just never really felt that. I just never really felt anything from this whatsoever. It's a boring film. It's lifeless. Nothing is scary. Nothing is threatening in any way, shape, or form. Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig deserve much better than this, and there should be a much better remake than this. Everything about it just doesn't work. It just is another black mark of a really bad year for Warner Brothers. They've had a couple of hits here and there, but when they try to do movies like this and stuff like the Hilary Swank movie from earlier in the year, I can't remember what it was now. It's the one with Idris Elba, but they've had movies like that. But yeah, it's just part of a really lackluster year for them when it comes to movies like this. They want so much more from it, and it's just not there. Yeah. Avoid this one like the plague, The Invasion. So, with that said, let us move on to our next movie, which is The Last Legion. Yeah, that's not, it's neither one of those things. It's another one of these historical epic movies that we've seen done to death so many times in the past, and, they were setting this up to be the next big 300 epic style film, and it was anything but that. This is loosely inspired by the events of 5th century European history, notably the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, coupled with other facts and legends from the history of Britain and fantastic elements from the legend of King Arthur, to provide a basis for the Arthurian legend. So it's basically a King Arthur movie, and not a very good one. Everybody in this movie feels very miscast in here. You see a lot of stuff here we've seen so many times before in the past. And kind of like with The Invasion, you don't get behind any of these characters because they're not threatening, they're not heroic, they're just stock characters. They're just there to do stuff that you expect in a movie like this. The action sequences, overall, are very much the same thing that we've seen done to death in so many other movies. There's nothing original about this movie whatsoever. Everything you've seen here is just copy and paste from other movies of similar lengths, but done much better. Nothing about this movie works, wasting a great cast that includes Colin Firth, Ben Kingsley, John Hannah, Ian Glenn, and Aishwarya Rai, Thomas Brody Sangster. Just so many better movies these people could be involved in, but no, they had to pick this movie. Yeah, this is a bad movie, and not much more to really say about this one, but it's a lifeless film. You don't get behind anything that they're doing in this film. It's a boring movie. Nothing engaging happens whatsoever. Avoid this one like the plague, The Last Legion. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. Let's get back to some good movies. How about that? Here's Frank Oz's Death at a Funeral. Yeah, this was a movie that was so good that they made an American remake of it, which is very much the same movie. But yeah, this one is actually this was also the last film directed by Frank Oz, which I've seen a lot of his movies I've liked. What About Bob? He's done a lot of stuff with the Muppets. He did In and Out, of course. I had no idea this was actually his last movie as a whole, but you focus on a family attempting to resolve a variety of problems when they attend the funeral of the patriarch of the family, and you have a cast that includes Peter Dinklage, Matthew McFadden from Succession, Alan Tudyk, and also Ewan Bremer among the cast in the film. And it's a really funny movie. It's a very funny, silly movie that works because you got all these talented people involved in here. I only ever saw the 2010 remake of the film, which I didn't think was that bad, but it took me a long time to actually see this film. And yeah, if I had to pick which one's the better film, this one is definitely the much better film. This is the one that I think has the better laughs in it, the better humor, like the better situations for comedy, the better cast involved here. And it doesn't feel like a mainstream movie. It feels like a film where you could tell that they were really putting their effort into it without a studio looking at them behind their backs and seeing what they were doing. And it's a very funny film. It's a very ridiculous movie. It's very silly. It's over the top, and it's very fun all across the board here. It's a really fun film. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I definitely recommend checking it out. I'd also recommend the remake. I think that even though I think the remake is definitely lesser than the original film, I think the remake's pretty good too. And we'll delve more into that when we get to 2010. But the original Death of the Funeral is pretty good too. So, and let's go ahead and wrap this episode up with the last one we have here. That's The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. So this is a story where you have a high school teacher, Steve Wibe, in his attempts to take down the high score record for the 1981 arcade game Donkey Kong from Billy Mitchell. Now, if you've ever seen the regular show episode where Mordecai and Rigby play the arcade game and get the high score, this is basically what they're making fun of in that episode. And yeah, it's a very stupid concept overall, but it makes for a very engaging and entertaining documentary from Seth Gordon, who would later go on to direct such films as Four Christmases, and most recently he did Back in Action with Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz. And yeah, this is a very engaging documentary. It's one where you have, you have this matchup between these two guys who've played this game of Donkey Kong so many times before, and it's a very engaging battle between these two. You do get invested in both the character, both the actor, the people involved in here, and it's a really interesting film that really does work very well. It's a very interesting movie that works on so many levels. If you grew up with these video games like I did, I grew up with these video games mostly whenever they were reissued on the Super Nintendo. We didn't really get them. If you've even played Pac-Man, the original Pac-Man games in the arcade, anywhere you go, you can definitely get a lot of feels for this movie in particular. And I think it's a very engaging film. It's a really interesting documentary. It's one I highly recommend checking out. Really, really good stuff here. The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. I highly recommend it. And so with all that said, we wrap up this edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we take a look at 5 more movies, including Rowan Atkinson returning as Mr. Bean in Mr. Bean's Holiday. We also have Jason Statham in the new action movie War, Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, Laura Linney in The Nanny Diaries. We have Samuel L. Jackson in Resurrecting the Champ, and we also have A Legal Tender. So we'll take a look at those 5 movies coming up on the next episode tomorrow. With all that said, though, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe button, notification button, and the bell, because that's how you know you get updates when videos come out, and we do post here every day. Now, with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.